Alex, how is studying going lately?
Studying is going well, Josh. Thank you. I was kind of beating myself up a little too much because I got, I think, 63.11% on my last practice exam that I took
Okay.
out of 103 questions total. I know it's not horrible,
Yeah.
but I'd like to score around 90%.
You've got
Consistent.
higher expectations for yourself. Yeah.
So,
Did it give you a breakdown by domain or anything like that?
not a breakdown by domain, just what I got wrong, and there was explanations as to what the answer was. So,
Okay. Good. Good. Good.
yep.
Donnie, I saw something in the chat. It sounds like maybe you got your mic working.
Yeah, I think it's I have to control it with the
Yeah, there we
browser. Yep. So I think we're good to
Nice.
go. Thank you.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear about how you found the group and what brings you here. Obviously, you're interested in the CISSP, I'm guessing.
Yes, more than happy to introduce myself. My name is Donnie Daniels, and I'm currently residing in Arlington, Texas. I've been working in information security for roughly about 8 years, up to about, if you count the first 2. I don't really count those officially, but it's more of an introduction to it. Nevertheless, I found the CISSP study group through the ISC2 website. So they have a forum, and I was looking for study groups and Googled around. And sure enough, there was a link to this. So prayer answered, thankfully. Trying to do this on my own and trying to organize the study times and go through the domains one by one. The Sybex book is pretty well written, but trying to understand where each of the domains resides within each of the chapters, or it's a little confusing. It gets
Jared, I'm sorry to interrupt. Jared, did you bring up that same thing last week about the mappings between the chapters in the Sybex book and the different domains? Or was that you, Jared?
Yes, I was. So at the very beginning, it does say like which chapters align with which domains, and it'll have like a chart of the domains. But then there was another YouTube video that said that the domains were like domain 1 was simply chapters 1 through 4.
Exactly.
And so it is a little convoluted. I've been trying to teach it I've been trying to learn it as the Sybex way presents it, which is domain 1 might be chapters 1, 5, 7, and 12 or something.
Okay.
That's the example. Those aren't the exact numbers. I
understand. Okay. So what you're saying is if I'm going to be studying domain 1, cover each of those chapters to get just a comprehensive review of that domain.
That's the way I've been doing it. Yeah.
Okay. That'll help. Because the idea of going chapter by chapter is I'm getting bits and pieces, and I'm barely through chapter 2 right now. So
I was talking to a coworker I have that recently passed the test, and he basically said that go through the Sybex tests or the Sybex practice questions, see which ones you make above an 85 on, and just study those chapters so you can weed out studying the chapters you already are an expert in.
Okay.
I don't know if that's self-explanatory or not.
No, it is. I took the assessment test from the book, and trying to map the actual questions to the domains is one of the challenges because it isn't exactly in the back of the book. So, Anyway, so that's my story.
Awesome.
That's where I'm at right now.
To have you here. You mentioned you've been in InfoSec for a while. What type of work do you do?
I work in the domain of IAM, identity.
Excellent. Yeah. Outstanding. We have at least 1 or 2 other people who are kind of focused on that domain as well. But this is no surprise. Everyone here usually has 1 or 2 domains that they have a specialty in.
Yes.
2 domains where they just need to refresh themselves, remember some terms or acronyms. And a couple of domains usually that are a little trickier.
Now, in this case, it's to get a new job. So.
Well, awesome. Good deal. That's a good motivator.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we might still have some people trickling in. Alton, great to see you. Forgive me. Is it Sandra? Right? Am I remembering that correctly? And Paul, I see you here too as well. Okay. So we get a couple new people here. I'm really grateful for that, Saravanan. Awesome to see you here. So just to introduce myself quickly, my name is Josh. I am CISSP certified. I was certified, I think, in 2021 roundabouts. I do have my master's degree in information security, and I work in compliance right now. I'm mostly a compliance and risk analyst. So you guys have interacted with the community, and I'm just so glad you're here. I'm here as an instructor. Instructor is kind of a loose term. I also just started a job recently as a university professor, so I'm trying to learn how to teach well. And you guys who have been here a couple of weeks have seen all of the changes that we've been making to this group. So thank you for your feedback. This session is a new style that we're trying out. I'm really excited about it. And please continue the feedback, because every week we're making changes because we want to get the best material as possible in front of you guys. So I want to just pause because we had someone in the group last week pass their exam and had some great things to share. Does anyone have some challenges or successes? Anyone schedule their test date? Anything like that they'd like to bring up? Is a great kind of open-ended section here. Also, go answer the icebreaker poll, because we'll be using polls a good amount today. So get yourself comfortable with that. Alex, fire away, my friend.
I just want to let everyone know I applied for a scholarship with ISC2, with ISC2, and I'm currently waiting to see, if I'm going to be one of the lucky recipients of the scholarship to basically take the exam. They pay for everything. They pay for the study material, so like the official books. I have ebooks that I'm studying from, but they'll actually, they pay for your books. They pay for your exam via voucher, so which is pretty awesome. So I'm currently waiting to see if that's going to happen.
That's great, man. Good job.
Thank you.
Voucher is not cheap. That's a win.
Yes.
I had my voucher paid for, and I probably wouldn't have taken the exam for probably another year later if I had to pay for my own voucher. So it's a good boost. Good job.
Thank you.
Nice. Anyone else have a shout out they want to bring up? Good job answering the icebreaker poll. See, we're having some troubles with domains. That's okay.
Hey, Josh. Yeah, I got more of a statement to say. I think Vincent covered this some weeks back, but I might have missed it. The CPE, we can sign up for that prior to passing the exam, right? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you just to make sure?
What does that benefit is? I mean, what is it? What's it?
Yeah. I just want to make sure I understand your first, Paul. You're asking, before I'm CISSP certified, why would I care about logging CPEs?
Right.
Yeah. Well, you can use CPEs across other certifications. I would guess the majority of us have those. So you can log them in ISC's website and get in the practice and the habit of logging them there. It's a nice central place to have a record of them. And then once you do get your certification, I don't know if those count for that calendar year towards renewal. I'm not actually positive on that. The bottom line is it's helpful if you have other certifications you want to maintain. Otherwise, I just consider it a good practice to get into. But if you're not worried about it until you pass your exam, then I wouldn't sweat it too much.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
Does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Cool. All right. Thanks for doing the icebreaker poll. Before I end it, I have a question for you guys. You guys know I'm still kind of learning polls. Can you see the number of people who have answered already?
I can see who voted for what. Or not who, but I can see how many voted for what.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you not see it anymore?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm going to end the poll. You guys can look at it and see, but I want to make sure you guys aren't cheating off each other in some of these question polls. I know you would, Jared. Okay. All right.
No, we're good test takers. We don't cheat.
So this is the first week. I have a couple of changes for us. And oh man, I'm so excited, you guys. So in the past, we've been doing topical learning, and we've been kind of, Alton, yeah, go ahead before I jump in. What's your question or comment?
Got it. Hey, I know they had one of the biggest challenges, but I'm not gonna even lie. One of my other challenges, not only just staying motivated, time management, both of those have given me problems in the past. But once I get the management and stuff, I think the domains, I can work them, I can see them, I can see what to do. But that time management and staying motivated are the two most, because you got too many distractions.
There are a lot of distractions, especially because if I had to take a guess, all of you are working professionals. All of you have probably been in your careers for more than a couple of years, which means you all have lives. You might all have families or kids. It's hard to go back and study for these exams. And it's even harder doing the time management, sticking with a good study plan. and staying consistent towards the test date. So, man, I hear you. Good job sticking with it, Alton. We're working on some study plans that might help with individual study sessions almost, kind of something a little further out on the roadmap. But you have resources or suggestions on time management or just staying disciplined. It is tough, no doubt about that.
Hey, one more quick question before I forget.
Yeah.
You touched on this before, but in taking the exam, did you confirm, or does anyone confirm that the first few questions? I think you suggested that make sure to answer the first like 20 questions correctly, and you'll get easier questions. You know, like for the CAT exam. Is that correct, or am I incorrect?
That might have been someone else, Paul. It might have been from like a YouTuber or someone that I don't think I've given that specific piece of advice. I don't want to say it's bad advice. I just don't know that it's good advice with confidence. Yeah, I can't refute it.
Does anyone else on the call know? Because someone said like the first three questions, if you don't answer them correctly, they get harder and harder. But if you answer them correctly, they get easier.
I heard the exact opposite from my coworker. He basically said that each question is just a randomly assigned. There's no one really knows the algorithm, but basically, mathematically speaking, each question is supposed to be 50-50 on whether or not you'll get it right. And they kind of adjust that to how you answered the previous question. So if you get the question 1 right, then question 2 will be a little bit harder. But if you get question 1 wrong, then they might take it a little bit easier. That's how he explained it to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So one thing in the Sybex book, I think it's on introduction, page 11. They go into some of these answering some of these specific questions you're having as to like how is it adaptive and things like that. If I can probably copy and paste some of this or try and get it in there in the chats or share it with you guys, but it does go into detail as to eliminating wrong answers, how to answer the questions, how it progresses, and at what point are you considered passing. And then there are also some questions in there that apparently are bogus. They're just experimental questions. So anyway, I don't want to take up the time.
Whenever you're not confident in an answer, just trick yourself into thinking it was one of those experimental questions.
There you go. There you go.
Cool.
Okay. I got something I want to share with you guys here, because all we're doing today is practice questions. And whatever we need to know to do it. And I have something for you guys. I'm going to put a link in the chat to your guys' copy of the notes. Hold on, where's the chat? So, if you have ever used Notion before here, if you would like a copy of these for yourself to do whatever you want with, you can just hit this duplicate button up at the top. I think you have to have an account to do it, but I think if you have a free account, it doesn't matter. You should also be able to use it yourself, but we're going to go through questions. These in the poll, but this you can have up in front of you if you want a place to just jot down some notes. Inside each of these questions, you'll get the question, you'll have the answer, you can take some notes. You guys know I like to start with keywords. You won't be able to edit this, but if you duplicate it, you'll be able to edit so you can add your own information in here. All this stuff is filled in though, so don't peek right now. If you've got the link open, don't peek because you're cheating. That's against the code of ethics, I'm pretty sure. So you guys have the link to that. You can also use this as your evidence when we do CPE logging at the very end. And at the bottom here, there's one other thing I want to show you guys. This here, I want you guys to send me your practice questions. So if you click here, we'll bring up another page. It's almost the same. And there's a form where you can submit practice questions. I get these directly. I'll review them. And then if we have some quality ones, then they'll just come right up as we're going to go through them today. So if you have practice questions that you're stumped on, or if you just think they're really good and other people would find value in them, then send them to me. So this link, there's a link in the community somewhere that Vincent has posted so that you can get to this page to submit your practice questions to me. And then the notes, which is linked in the chat, I just linked, you have the link at the bottom here. So I'm not going to have this open. You guys can have this open for yourselves if you want to. So let me pause for a moment. Why did we make this transition? Taking the exam is probably about as hard as the actual technical knowledge that you need to take the exam, the prerequisite knowledge. You guys are all technicians or have experience at that level. You guys are all accustomed to studying these complicated topics and getting familiar with them. The exam throws that adaptive learning piece. It throws test-taking strategies, throws things like you have to think like a manager instead of a technician. So instead of going topically like we have been, we're going to switch their focus to using practice questions. So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to answer them. In the future, I'll have a timer that's actually up so you can see it. For now, I'm just going to have a stopwatch here. So who can tell me how much time you should average per question on the new CISSP exam, which was, what was it, refreshed in April? Who can tell me? Someone knows the answer.
Isn't it a bit more than 1 minute?
Yeah, I think a minute and 10 seconds.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, about a minute. You want to time yourself for a minute. That way you can have excess time for other questions. So if you do 10 questions, you're doing pretty good. Then you buy yourself an extra 1 to 2 minutes on a question that's more challenging or that has visuals. Maybe you have to do some math. So I'm going to have a timer set for 1 minute here, just in front of me. I'm going to put up the first practice question. Make sure you have your poll up and ready if you need it. Have your notes up and ready if you need it. I'm going to give you guys 1 minute. I'm not going to say or do anything. You guys just read the question and practice answering it well. If you don't know the answer, that's okay. I want you to answer because you have to answer on the exam, or you should. Is it Sandra? Refresh my memory.
Yeah, you have a very good memory. I don't expect you to remember.
Working on it.
Just a question here. Hold on.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry. For these questions when we're answering, I know in the previous like sessions that we would just answer in the chat section or just verbally out loud say it. How would you like us to answer the questions this time?
Yeah, great question, Sandra. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to put the practice question up and start my timer. You don't need to talk. Don't put anything in the chat. I just want you and the practice question. You just focus on each other. After that, we'll have a short discussion. You guys can discuss why an answer is right or wrong, and then we'll go through it a little bit together to make sure we're all on the same page for why the correct answer is what it is and why the almost correct answer is what it is. So does that answer your question? We won't talk about the answer until we actually can talk about it as a group. And again, check the polls. So the polls that's in the bottom right corner of your screen, you should have the activities. It's a bunch of shapes. If you click that, there should be a poll option. So are we ready? Does anyone, I'm going to just pause here. Does anyone else have any questions before we go to the first one? We can pause after the first question in case there's any more. But
yeah, I can't question.
Oh, okay. No sweat. Cliff, that must be you. Yeah, I'll read out the questions here. I don't know if you can see the.
Well, no, that's fine. But and if I can't mute myself, will you mute me here in a moment? I'm going to go ahead and.
No sweat. And Cliff, you maybe have already heard this, but in the chat, there's a link to the notes, and you might be able to see the questions a little bit easier that way. It's whatever's easiest for you. So, any other questions? All right, we're going to do it. I'm going to put the practice question up. You guys just answer. You can go in the poll and answer, and then my timer will go off. Have some music ready for us next time.
Jeopardy music.
Exactly. Willie, welcome. We're just doing a practice question right now. So good time. We got just a few seconds left. Okay, 1 minute. Pencils down. No one has answered the poll because I forgot to launch it. That would be a good reason why the poll is blank so far. So that's my fault. All right. People are jumping in with their votes. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to answer since I forgot to actually launch it. Final step of a quantitative risk analysis. All right. So does anyone know offhand, without peeking, the steps of a quantitative risk analysis?
Are we allowed to unmute?
Yeah, go for it. We can just do a discussion, free-form discussion.
Oh. It's funny. I know the first part. The last one was always the question. You would ask about the last one. The first one was always assigning value and determining what you have in the environment. So A kind of just went right off the bat up. It's not a right answer.
Yep, perfect. That's the first one would be determining asset value.
Mhm.
We want to know what assets we have. We have to identify them first and assign a value to them. It's the identification phase of NIST. All right, who's got another answer? And Donnie, feel free to jump in if you've got another one too. But I see lots of C's and D's. Who does not know the answer? Who is not confident in their answer? I would love it if someone who is not confident would jump up and tell me why they chose what they did. Sarah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not confident in my answer. I chose C.
Let's see, Sarah, I'm not hearing you for some reason.
Can you hear me now?
I can see that you're talking, but it's not coming through for me.
Who's coming through over here?
Can you hear me?
We can hear her.
Let's see, Jared, I'm going to jump to you. Go ahead.
I'm hearing her.
Yeah, we can hear her. But I put D.
I can't hear Jared
I
either. Can you
figured.
guys hear them, or is it just me?
I can hear everybody.
I can hear everybody.
Yeah, same.
Uh-oh. No, I can't hear
I
me.
think we lost him.
Okay.
I can hear.
I don't know why I can hear. So,
I can hear everybody as well.
real quick. Oh, I'm going to lose my polls if I do that. I'm gonna lose my polls if I do that. Okay. I might have to leave and come back in. Hang tight. I really want to be able to hear you guys. So let me just go to my settings and see what I goofed. Boy, that's weird. My sound is just gone. Sorry, guys. We'll have to see how we can continue on with this. We're going to rely more on the poll, apparently. So, final step of a quantitative risk analysis. Donnie nailed it. We want to start with identifying what the assets are, and then we're going to identify what the threats are to the assets. We know what we care about. Now, what could happen to those threats? That would be the second step. Once we've identified what the threats are, then we actually do a threat analysis. That threat analysis leads to, if you're looking at your notes in the background knowledge, the threat analysis step leads to ARO. What is ARO? I can't hear you guys actually, so that's a difficult question to answer.
Annualized rate of
I hate to do it,
return.
guys, but I'm going to leave the meeting and try and rejoin. I am going to lose the poll questions, but hopefully with our visuals, we can kind of keep things going a little bit. So I'm going to leave and come right back because I really want to be able to hear you guys. So stand by.
Annualized rate of occurrence, ARO? Is that what that was?
Yes, it's annualized rate of occurrence.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Yes, that is.
Yeah.
That is right.
It's funny. This is exactly what I was reading today. Go figure. Chapter 2. There's a section of the book where it started going to a whole bunch of calculations, like
Yeah.
the annualized rate of occurrence, and then
I can hear you guys. Thank you guys for your patience.
the cost benefit security controls. It got a little bit heady.
Okay, I'm sorry about that, guys. So step 1, we're getting our assets. Step 2, we're identifying our threats. Step 3, we're analyzing those threats. Step 4 is where we start to calculate some numbers here. We know what the threats are to our assets. We want to turn that into a number. We'll do the loss expectancy, annualized loss expectancy, ALE. These are in your notes. After we know our annualized loss expectancy, we can go into countermeasures. What can we actually do to make an impact on these numbers? Can we change them? What are the controls that would make a difference here? The final step of quantitative risk analysis is conducting a cost-benefit analysis. We know what our assets are. We know what our threats are. We know what that threat would do to our asset if it happened. We've already identified countermeasures to improve the whole situation. The final thing is that cost-benefit. This is a piece of thinking like a manager versus a technician. When we take a step back, we need to understand, is the amount of effort, time, expense, employees that we have to put at this problem, at this risk, is it worth it? If I have a risk, like I've got a window here in my office, it'd be easy enough for someone to come by with a rock, smash the window, come in and grab my computer. That's a risk that I have. If I want to do a cost-benefit analysis on a possible countermeasure, the countermeasure being I'm going to put bars over my window. Well, for me, the cost-benefit isn't really there. My window's on the second floor. I'm not really worried about someone being able to climb up and get my computer. So the cost-benefit analysis isn't in my favor. Now, a government building where they're required to have different types of security measures, this is different. What are the needs of the organization? So this is that final step, cost-benefit analysis. And I know I lost my polls. I just got to look. Oh, I didn't. Oh, I
Hey,
didn't.
where did A fall in the steps again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Yeah. A is the very first step. We want to look at what assets do we have and how valuable are they. So the progression, I'm going to put this in the chat, is AV is going to lead to EF and SLE. Hang tight, you guys will get this. To ARO, to ALE, back to ARO, and ALE.
I think the way you explained the cost-benefit analysis of actually deploying the countermeasures, deploying your mitigation. So, like, is it going to be more cost-effective to put bars on the window, or is it going to be more cost-effective to just put a lock on it and a security guard?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I put in the chat a very simple way to think of these steps. And again, these are all in the background knowledge for your notes, but we're starting with AV, our asset value. We're moving on to EF and SLE. So we know what our assets are worth. How exposed are our assets? If something were to happen, how much of an impact would it have? When you think of exposure, don't think of a risk profile exposure. EF is a specific term, exposure factor, for how bad is it going to hurt when I get hit. If someone steals my computer, it's 100% loss. The exposure factor is 100% in that situation. If my laptop gets stolen, I lose 100% of that asset. Versus if, like, we have a flood that's coming in, we might only lose a percentage of our assets. Yeah, Sandra, did you have a question?
Yes, actually, out of curiosity, by the way, I like this new way of like going over the questions with the polls. Out of curiosity, are you able to, does it record on your end, like the time? I'm just trying to see how, if I took me like 20 seconds, 1 minute,
For answering the questions?
Yes, I can gauge how long it's taking me to answer total.
Black and blue every time.
That's
You can charge it, but put it in the charger for a little bit and see what it does.
That's a great question. That's a great question, Sandra. And actually, one of the things that I'd like to do in the future is, apparently there's a way I can put widgets in that Notion page where you can start a timer. So you could time yourself on some of these. But in the future, I'm going to put a timer actually on screen so you guys can kind of see about how you're doing time management. Yeah, Sarah.
You know what? I really don't think that would be really useful, given that on the actual exam, this is something we'll have to like just do ourselves. So let's just not rely too much on it, that we're able to see, you know, just the ticking clock at every question.
That's fair.
So yeah, so I think this is something we should practice while we're doing this activity.
That's a really good counterpoint. In the time when you're in a session, you'll have a clock available, which you should on your computer screen, hopefully somewhere or another. But yeah, that's a great point, Sarah. We won't have a clock or a timer per question, so it might be helpful just to force yourself to get intuitive sense of how long it's taking you to answer. So this time around, I've got my 1 minute timer, and regardless, we'll work on something for it later. So let's jump on to the next question here, because I got 15 of these for it. Well, no, not 15. I got 10 plus 2 really cool bonus ones. So I'm going to start my timer. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Josh,
no peeking.
When you're doing the test, do you have access to a calculator?
No, correct me if anyone knows differently, but no, you shouldn't have access to a calculator. You have some scratch paper, but the only math you should have to do is like some subnetting or some of these quantitative pieces. And that, do you have a different answer?
Yeah, you do have access to a calculator.
You do? Okay, I'm wrong. Thank you for correcting me in that. I appreciate that. Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to question 2. Let me get my poll. All right, timer started. Poll is launched. Just for awareness, most of these questions are related to domain 1. Doesn't matter for answering the questions. You don't need to figure that out in an exam. It's irrelevant, but just for context.
That's convenient. It's in line with what I'm working on right now. As we start moving through the rest of the domains, do you have a schedule for what that's going to look like? I want to try and take the test in October,
Yes.
November.
Outstanding question. Yes, but not yet. It's on our roadmap. We would like to have kind of a, if you looked at the study group calendar, you'd be able to see what domains we're going through. We'd
Cool. So it is there.
Well, it's not yet. No, it's kind of one of the things we're working on behind the scenes of having more of a curriculum put together.
Okay, appreciate your work, Josh. Thank you.
Great feedback, Donnie. Keep those questions and comments coming. Okay, that's our 1 minute. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Good split. I like seeing that. All right, who's feeling confident in their answer? Donnie, if you're talking, you're on mute there. Let's see. Sarah? Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think I got this one right. The correct answer is D, focused on social engineering. I'm pretty positive.
That is correct. Yeah, well done. Well done. Okay, are you comfortable telling us why you selected D versus any of the others?
Yes. So yeah, threats is basically we're trying to find ways in which our assets, they can basically be harmed or damaged. So they can either be focused on assets. For example, threats can be focused on maybe our information systems or IoT devices, a different kind of infra that we have, like network devices and stuff. They can be focused on attackers. There are different kind of attackers out there who may have like different reasons to attack different kind of organizations or different kind of assets. And then software, like open source, it's like more vulnerable. So it's common that the attackers would want to like find weaknesses or vulnerabilities in those kind of software. Focus social engineering is itself a kind of attack. It's not exactly a threat.
Perfect. That's what I was looking for. Social engineering, that's a type of threats or a type of attack. So it's one of the things that would come up as we're doing threat modeling. Yeah, you nailed that, Sarah. Well done. Those are the first 3 assets, attackers, and software. Think about where we care. Where would we go hunting to find threats? This is that second step in the process we were just discussing here. So we determined our asset value. The next thing we need to identify threats against those assets. So we're identifying threats. Social engineering is just one of those threats. Like Sarah said, we have assets that we care about. That's that first step, identifying assets. We can look from an attacker perspective. So there's threat modeling, threat models that are built to look at that from attack vectors. And then software. I work for a software development company. Threat modeling for software works a little bit differently. So yeah, I think Saravanan, you had your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, Josh. I think I wanted to understand a little bit more on which one of these are based on like the models or like what the threat modeling stuff like we studied, right? Stride, pasta, or whatever stuff, like, which one is based on this? Like, is stride is based on assets? Is it pasta based on attackers? Like, are we aware of? I think I studied it, like, but I lost the memory.
That's a good question. I don't have anything prepared. It seems like a table or a chart would be really helpful for that. So let me just jot that down, Sarvan, because I have another table I need to work on for us. That's a great question. So
Isn't the MITRE framework? Sorry, I didn't raise my hand first. I think the MITRE framework. Sorry, I think that is basically that gives you kind of like a guide on how attackers they look for threats. No.
Yes.
No, this is the question I'm asking about, right? Okay. A stride is based on what? The stride is concentrating on what? Is it based on asset? Is it attacker? Is it software? Is it pasta is based on asset or attacker software? That's what I'm asking.
So let's just look it up. All right. So here's stride. We're looking at spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, for elevation of privilege. So think back to, we have assets, we have attackers, and we have software. Where would we expect to see these types of threats carried out? What actor? If we were thinking from an attacker perspective, are these are things that would come up? If we were thinking about our assets, is this what would come up? Who's got some thoughts on this? I'm not giving you an answer. I'm just trying to think through this together.
I think we're trying to mix the two different things. These are the models. All kind of threats would be incorporated in these.
Yeah,
they're not specific to one.
Yeah, they very well can be. Yeah, the stride model, it fits. They have answers in all three categories, absolutely. Because elevation of privilege, yeah, there's on assets, you have elevation of privilege. Software, same sort of a concept. These are more attack types or things like that. So this would be more so focused on attackers, but like Sarah said, they could be applicable across any of these. So I wouldn't focus on a one-to-one alignment, stride equals assets or attackers. And, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. A table would be helpful, but I think Sarah's point is excellent that there's.
No, I think it is not like that, right? If you go a little bit study, a little bit deep, I think it is every model is specific to something.
Okay.
The stride may be specific to two things, but pasta is specific to one thing.
Okay. Well, I have that question jotted down, Sravanan, on my list. So I will just.
Yeah,
All right. So let's focus on social engineering. All right. Let's get on to our next question. I'll get my timer up. All right. Launching the poll. You guys go ahead and do your thing. I launched the wrong poll. Sorry. There we go. Which one of the following elements of information is not considered PII that would trigger most U.S. state data breach laws? Okay, you guys are feeling pretty confident about this, I can tell. I'm going to cut off your clock early. That's about 20, or that's about 45 seconds or so that we went. So, great job. You guys all nailed it. Student identification number. As we're looking at these responses, PII, it needs to be personally identifiable information. I had a term I wanted to bring up specifically with that. When data categories are being determined, we're looking at the impact, the type of impact or likelihood. So a student identification number has a lower likelihood and impact in the sense that it would be more difficult to link it with financial fraud or identity theft. And plus, it's the least sensitive data type on this list too. So you guys all nailed that. Student identification number. Very brief question. We're not going to pause on it. It's not a practice question. Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Real quick, because I mean, this is a fairly easy question, but the practice exams I've been doing, they throw in different items. Does someone home address considered personally PII or?
Yeah, they can be. They can be. It depends on some of the age of the data is one piece of that, but there are gray areas, and there's gray areas by country. In general, those sort of things would be PII because you can take those, you could do a search on those and link it to a person or an identity. Even though there might be multiple identities, like if you're using address search databases, if someone has my address, they can get more information about me and start to develop a profile. Versus a student identification number, a little more difficult to do that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Okay. Let me throw in a trick answer here. A MAC address. Is a MAC address PII or not?
Nope.
No.
It's not. It's
No.
not, except in Germany. And I think one other country too. Just kind of an interesting little fact or factoid for you. A MAC address or an IP address, things like that, even if they're static, they can still be spoofed. It's not really linked to an identity. Even when we're talking about corporations, it's more difficult to link to any type of an identity. So a MAC address, not PII, but just kind of interesting to know that in a couple of countries it is considered PII. But for the exam, don't think so.
Is that because of the GDPR, or is that just isolated to that country?
I don't think it is linked specifically to GDPR.
Okay.
It's something special for Germany. It's a privacy framework that they have. I don't actually have that noted down, but that's a great question, Donnie, because normally GDPR is exactly what you would want to think of if you hear privacy in Europe. So
Hey,
great.
Josh. Yeah, this is where I think getting confused, because if you go take the LearnZ app, the questions, right? Even the student identification number is still a PI, right? And even like the one that IP address, MAC address, everything is a PI.
Yeah, well, there might be some gray area in that, but the answer that I have for you is it's not PII almost always. Sometimes there are cases where it can be, but all the things that I've studied, that's not usually classified as PII. But if you have information that says differently, if you would send that to me, Sravanan, because
Yeah, I mean, I would have to find that question, but it is, I mean, anything that you can identify a person based on something, right? It's a PI, which is student identification number. You can identify a person, right? It's a PI.
But usually only within the school system, and it's only monitored or enforced by FERPA, which is the federal.
Bring up. Cheryl, you work in identity and access management, kind of. I bet you work with data a lot.
Yeah, I just got done taking a couple of FERPA classes for the universities that I teach for, and certain things are considered public information, like the directory stuff and like what somebody's major is and so forth. They're allowed to post that. Student identification number, if it was used outside of the school system, then it would be PII, but because it's only within that system, that is how they can say it's not considered PII.
That's really helpful, Cheryl. So Sravanan, what I'm hearing is that if this question were phrased a bit differently or had an answer even less personable than PII, the answer might look different potentially. So Cheryl, thanks for the information. That was
right. Yeah, it's the U.S. state data breach laws is where you get caught with it.
Okay. Well, Sravanan, I have a question jotted down for myself just to do some extra research on that to bolster my understanding. But if you come across anything related to that, if you would send it to me, I'd appreciate it. Okay. Next practice question. Your timer is going, and poll. Oh, hold on. I got to restart the poll. Too soon. So you guys you focus on the question. I'll get the poll up again.
Hey, Josh, I don't see the poll on this one.
You should see it now. There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I appreciate it, man. All right, that's time. Put your pencils down.
No, wait, no.
Looks good. Boy, you guys are doing well with this. Document your decision-making process is a pretty popular answer. Well done. So, and that's exactly right. Documenting your decision-making process. So if you have, I don't know if anyone's using those student notes. You know, my practice is the first thing I want to do is look at the keywords. You find the keywords, it makes the question a lot easier to answer, and it minimizes your mistakes because you sometimes as you're reading through it, you'll miss an all or a not or something like that. So completing a business continuity planning effort. So who can tell me what the acronym BIA stands for? BIA.
Business impact.
Business impact analysis.
Okay.
Yep, perfect. All right. Someone else, PIA, Papa India Alpha. Yeah, Sandra.
It's a privacy impact assessment.
Bingo. So we have business impact assessments and we have privacy impact assessments. So it's not asking about a privacy impact assessment here. I just want to bring it up because it's a related term. So you've decided you want to accept one of the risks. Risk acceptance. What other types of actions can we take with risk? Throw out a couple more terms besides risk acceptance.
Risk transference.
Transference. Awesome. Thank you, Willie. Who's got another one?
Avoidance.
Avoidance. Yeah, perfect. There's a handful of these. We can avoid the risk and transfer it. Someone else handle that.
Mitigate it.
Yeah, we can mitigate the risk. Let's take care of it. Let's remediate it. We can mitigate it. So at the end of that, though, we did our business continuity planning effort. We've decided we want to accept one of the risks. What do you do next? You guys all know that we want to document our decision-making process. One of the key words here is justification. We need to justify why we made the decision that we did and have it in writing. This is huge in any aspect of security, really, is when you make a call, you need to write down why you made that call. That way, when something happens, which it will, you have something to fall back on and say, yeah, I know I made the decision that way. I accepted that risk, knowing it was there. It wasn't negligence, and here's why. I justified it. So, repeating the business impact assessment. Nope, this is a trick. We do repeat some analysis and quantitative analysis. After we pick our countermeasures, we're going to run our numbers again and see what those do. That's not quite a business impact analysis. We're not talking about disaster recovery here. They are linked, but it's not synonymous here. Jarrett, you had a question, I think in one of the first sessions you joined with us, you asked about BCDR. You know, when does business continuity stop and disaster recovery begin? And I do want to get you a more robust answer, but the answer is that they aren't distinct. They're not separate. They're interlinked in a lot of ways. So we're going to go into that, but it's important to know we're talking about business continuity. Disaster recovery is part of that. We'll use information about that, but it's not necessarily the answer here. And then new security controls to reduce the risk. We've decided to accept it. We're not mitigating it, is Alton called out. So nice job, guys. Yeah, risk waiver, often documented as a risk waiver. That's exactly right.
Hey, Jonas, quick question on the previous question there real quick.
Absolutely.
When you covered risk acceptance, I'm just trying to remember offhand. Risk acceptance is you actually apply like countermeasures and stuff, right? And then you figure out that you want to still accept it, or you don't make any.
Great question. Great question. Because the answer is yes, all of the above, depending on the situation. Let's take the easy case of my window here. All right, if I just want to accept the risk, someone could throw a rock in my window and break it. But I'm not going to deal with bars. I know they can do it. The likelihood is very low. The impact is the cost of a new window. All right, I'm going to accept that risk. Maybe I don't want to accept it. Maybe I want to explore the countermeasure of putting bars in front of my windows. Well, now I can go and I can re-review that. Am I going to accept any residual risk?
Gotcha. That's the difference.
Countermeasures. We recalculate our numbers. There's still risk left over. Not all the time, but most of the time. So we have to make a decision what to do with that risk. So great question, Paul, because you're right. We might accept risk, but we might have taken a decision beforehand to reduce it potentially.
Gotcha. Thanks.
I brought that up, man. Great call. Okay. All right, get ready for the next question here. Timer is a-going. Let me get the poll going here too. All right, poll's launched. It's a big test, you guys. We talked about identification, authentication, authorization, and accountability a good chunk last week. Okay, you got another 20 seconds to kick it around. Okay, that's time. All right, good job. We had a split answer here. We have a couple votes for access control lists, tokens, which we talked about a good chunk last week. No one's falling for username. A couple people are looking at password. All right, someone step up and tell me why you picked what you picked.
Well, I picked token. I mean, password. Yeah, I mean, I could see how we can kind of go with that, but it says authorization tool. And token, from what I remember, it's kind of used to give authorization for sessions or something like that.
You're on the right track. Yeah, you're real close. You're real close there. Okay.
So
pause for a moment. Authorization and authentication. Now those, because they're so stinking close, auth and auth, it's easy to get them confused, especially if you're in a practice test or an exam. Who wants to distinguish them? Authentication and authorization. What's the difference? Yeah, Annette.
I would say if it would have said authentication, that would have been a password then, right?
Yeah, if it had said authentication, username and password would be a great way to do that. We're authenticating you to a system. There's a component of identity, which would be your username, and authentication, which would be your passwords. Yeah, exactly.
They say that is saying that it's you. You're the one that, you know, it's authenticating. You're the person that's trying to get into the whatever.
Yeah, perfect.
Like I say, authentication is identity. It's identity based.
Yeah.
Authorization is once you say who you are, then you have an access control list or something that authorizes you to go a certain direction through whatever door you want to go through.
Bingo. Yeah, nice job, Donnie. So let's go through the two answers that are most confusing. We've covered the username and password. We have identification and we have authentication. We have who are you? Now prove it. Show me that you're your username. Now access control list. Okay. And a token. We talked a good amounts about tokens last week. What does a token do? A token, you go through the identification and authentication stages with some sort of identity provider. They issue you a token. You use that token to prove that you have already authenticated in the system. That may come with authentication portion, or authorization portions. That token doesn't necessarily know what your permissions are on every single system. Access control list, that's its job, is to know, are you authorized to do this? Access control list, it could be paired with something like Radius, which would be our authentication piece. Access control list would take it this step further. I know who you are and you've proved it. Are you allowed to do this? Access control list restricts that. A token, Paul, you use the term session, which is perfect. And it's tricky because a token is used a lot in authorization processes. When you hear token, focus on that term of, I have already authenticated, so I have a token. Okay. So yeah.
Real quick, I'm glad, I like this question. Thanks for clarifying. But I think I jumped too fast when I saw ACL. I went immediately to firewall or like the network equipment that have ACLs.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a portion where if you look at a micro scale, like an individual device, an access control list almost does function for authentication at that point. It's not quite the same, but yeah, I can see where you would get that point. Yeah. Nice job, guys. Okay. A little bit of a longer question. Your timer is a going, and poll is launched. Tom enables an application firewall provided by his cloud infrastructure as a service provider. It is designed to block many types of application attacks. When viewed from a risk management perspective, what metric is Tom attempting to lower? So you guys just go ahead and think. Okay, 20 seconds. Only seen a couple of votes. You guys can do it. Nice. Okay. And the poll, great job. Once you got likelihood. And there was a practice question that we went over in the community, I think last week, that ended up getting some good discussion surrounding these concepts, especially surrounding impact and likelihood. Who can tell me impact and likelihood? What's the relationship between the two? Where do those two terms show up in the same sentence? They both measure something.
Risk.
Yeah, they measure risk. Exactly right. We're seeing something in here about what metric are we attempting to lower? We're lowering a measure of risk is what we're hoping to do here. So let's go back through our question. You guys know I like keywords. Application firewall. In this question, this is filler language. Cloud infrastructure as a service provider, also filler language. You don't need to worry about this. They'll throw in information like this. Some questions, it might be critical. To this question, it's not actually a keyword. Blocking many types of application attacks. Don't focus on the application piece of this. We're trying to stop a lot of attacks. There's attacks that are coming. Some of them are going to happen, but we want to stop as many as we can. We want to reduce the likelihood of them being able to happen. When I put a technical control, I want to reduce the likelihood of someone being able to do that, ideally to zero. So an access control list, if someone tries to bypass my access control list, I'm hoping the likelihood of them being able to do that is zero. The confusing piece can be impact, because if we reduce likelihood, it really shows up like we're reducing impact. I didn't get impacted by my firewall being, DOSed or something like that. So didn't I reduce my impact? But the impact is looking more at the severity of a single event if it were to actually take place. If, let's see, in this case, an application firewall, if it were to get breached, well, let's see, no, that's not what I'm looking at. So, yeah. What would be the severity of that? Well, we're trying to lower the likelihood metric. Okay, who wants to tell me briefly what RPO and MTO, those two acronyms are?
Thank you, because they're drawing a blank on that.
That's why I immediately ruled these out, because these are related to contingency planning.
Yeah.
So RPO is recovery point objective, and then MTO, I think it's mean time to operate or something. Mean time. I never heard of MTO, but I'm thinking it's mean time to something.
I think it's maximum tolerable outage. Is it not?
No, that's the maximum
time. I'm looking up. It's in the notes somewhere.
tolerable outage.
Recovery point of maximum tolerable outage. So
Allowable interruption window.
Yeah. Exactly.
Maximum amount of time that a critical service can be down or unavailable before it interferes with the achievement of an organizational objective. Okay.
So I know MTO, it's also known as MTD, which is maximum tolerable downtime. That's why MTO looks strange to me, but I guess different, wherever you are, they use different terms.
I see MTD and MTO, maximum tolerable outage versus maximum tolerable downtime. The principle's the same.
It's the same.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing with the exam. You never know there's like several different terms that mean the same thing. You never know what they're going to use.
So you guys have heard me give this practice tip or this test tip, but one of the things I've done on every certification exam, review your acronyms the night before and the day of. There are so many of them. And as you guys have already seen, it's so easy to forget the ones that you don't use very often or to get them mixed up because you use one that's really similar. So focus on that because there's at least one question here where if you don't know the acronym, you're guessing at the question. And if you know the acronym, then it's not that difficult. So, okay, great job. You guys got likelihood. I'm going to start my timer and poll on the next question. So you guys go ahead and do your thing. Okay, you guys got about 20 seconds. All right. Nicely done. Nicely done. I'll show you guys the results there. Answer: malicious hacker. That is our threat. Who wants to tell me my key words here? What's the most important word in this? There's one word that if you don't know the definition of really well, like what it truly means, it's hard to answer this question.
Threat?
Threat. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
It's almost
You
like a
guys
trick
can do
question.
we're senior level in our field, and what's the definition of a threat? And that's what it is. I know they say it's a mile wide and an inch deep, but there are concepts where it's very specific. So you guys I'll just vent for a moment. You guys work in the industry. You're comfortable working with vendors from other organizations. Sometimes they have a different understanding of what security is. So if someone uses the term risk, you have to filter that through their knowledge and their perspective. If I ask my CEO of my company, what is the biggest threat to this company? He looks at it from dollars and cents. Oh, lost opportunity. We got so much stuff. Let's go. That's not a threat. But we have different definitions. And in our industry, we need to focus on the common body of knowledge definition of a threat. So who wants to take a stab at a short distinguishment between what a threat is and its relationship to a vulnerability and a risk? We want just a simple relationship. No need to go deep into the definition. What relates to what to what?
Threat is, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say risk is a vulnerability.
Risk.
Yeah.
Not quite. Not quite. Yeah. Sorry,
Not quite.
Threat is something that is what do you call it? Threat is something that is making harm to asset, and vulnerability is a weakness in the asset, and then risk is something that the threat is exploiting the vulnerability and then causing an impact.
Yeah, exactly right. So let's walk through that nice and slow here. So let's focus first on a threat. A threat has the potential, hasn't done it yet, but it has the potential to cause harm or damage or some bad thing is going to happen. Another thing to think about, a threat exploits a vulnerability. A threat can be doing the exploiting on something. A vulnerability is passive. It can't do the exploitation itself. It needs something to do the exploitation on it or some external event to make it happen. So a vulnerability, Sravanan used the term weakness. That's exactly right. When we do a vulnerability scan of an environment, we're looking for things like this hasn't been patched, so it's missing security updates. Those are vulnerabilities. Those are weaknesses or deficiencies in the system that a threat actor, someone like a malicious hacker, could take advantage of and exploit. Threats do the exploiting. Vulnerabilities are exploited. The risk is what happens or what would happen if the threat exploits the vulnerability. So in this case, let's just call out our terms. Alex, I see you got your hand raised. Go ahead. And then we'll go.
I was just going to ask you a really quick question, Josh. Is a security assessment also considered to be a vulnerability assessment as well?
a security assessment, and a vulnerability assessment. Again, it depends on whose definitions we're using. If we're using our definitions by CISSP, not necessarily. A vulnerability assessment is usually, you would typically link it to like CVEs, a vulnerability database, something that we as an industry can agree on. Yep, that's a vulnerability. That's not a vulnerability. So there's usually an element to that. The security assessment, though, might include things that you might not categorize as vulnerabilities in a vulnerability scan. So vulnerabilities are more technical sometimes in that context. It's not a good answer. It's just, it's kind of tricky and it depends on the context. But yeah, that's why the keywords are helpful here. So
Hey,
yeah, Sandra, did you have a question?
I just wanted to add to everyone here for when you're thinking of risk, I think for me, the key word is likelihood that something's going to happen. So like usually the answers will have something like that. So if it deals with likelihood or probability of something, that is the risk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, impact and likelihood, two really critical terms. That's exactly right, Sandra. So let's identify what we have here. Brian's a security analyst. He's examining SQL injection. Is that a threat, a risk, or a vulnerability? SQL injection.
That's a vulnerability.
Yeah, vulnerability. Well, okay, could be.
Could be a vulnerability. Yes.
We have there. What is the remediation for SQL injection? There's a specific term. What is what in software? Software
Validation.
Validation, input validation.
Input validation. Nice job. Yeah, input validation reduces the risk of an SQL injection attack. An SQL injection attack exploits a vulnerability. The vulnerability being I'm vulnerable to SQL injection. I don't have input validation. The hacker is the actual threat that's carrying out this SQL injection. So we have this, our unpatched web application. That's an asset that we have. It's unpatched, so it has vulnerabilities on it. But that's all it is. It's not a threat necessarily. It can't do anything bad to us. Bad stuff could happen to it, though. Web defacement. This is a way to look at what the risk is. Sandra brought up the concepts of likelihood or impact. When we're looking at web defacement, there's a likelihood or an impact surrounding that. We have to make a decision. If our website were defaced, what would that do? Is there a likelihood behind it? So, and then the hacker's the actual one doing that. The operating system, maybe it has vulnerabilities, but it's not really relevant. It's more of a filler answer there. So let's see. Donnie, looks like you had your hand raised.
Yeah. So for those of us who aren't web developers or web administrators, SQL injection, how does data validation prevent that? And if that's outside the scope of this lesson today, we can do it another day. Or if you could recommend something.
Really good question. I'm going to pause here. I'll share a personal story with you guys. So when I was going through my boot camp for Certified Ethical Hacker, I had a professor who was just amazing. And he had a screw loose in the best possible way. And he loved to hack, and he would do it live in class, and it was absolutely illegal. He demonstrated SQL injection once live on a hospital system on accident. It worked. So very illegal, but I got to see it live, and it was kind of fun as a security student to get to see those types of attacks. So to answer your question, though, on SQL injection. So what you're doing is you're inserting characters that the back-end system is processing as code. Input validation says, okay, if you see a character like this, it's not actually giving a command. I only want you to look at it as plain text, essentially. So if I'm inputting my username and I'm putting in my password or filling out a profile online and I hit enter, if I put something funky in there, it's not going to actually execute a command. Things like buffer overflow. That could be the result of an SQL injection attack.
Okay.
So input validation is just making sure that when I am provided an input, it's essentially sanitized beforehand. Making sure that anything could happen.
Okay, so it's like using a Cyrillic E versus an actual like ASCII E.
Yeah, say that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep it going here. We got 20 minutes. I'm going to cut your guys' time down a little bit because I want to make sure we have time to go through all of these. So you go ahead and start, but I'm going to cut us down to, I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds. Challenge you. I haven't hit start though, so you're getting some bonus time on this one. Okay, 30 seconds. Go. This is one of those acronym ones. If you don't know the acronym, it's going to be pretty tough. All right. End in the poll. Good job. Most of you guys got government. Well done. That's
Wild guess.
right. Wild guess worked. SCA. Who
You're
can tell me
welcome.
what SCA stands for?
Okay. I assumed it was software composition analysis.
Security control assessment.
Security control.
Security control assessment. Okay.
Yep,
Oh,
security.
I was linking it to that where we have to, create like an inventory of like prepare a code base. I think that's called software bill of materials. So for that, you use an SCA tool. So I just assumed that.
Yeah.
And
Great call outs. That's an example of how acronyms could be confusing. In a different context, SCA absolutely is different. What does it stand for? It stands for, in the context of this question, security control assessment. There is a coding mechanism with the same acronym. Who said it? Is that you, sir?
software, yeah, I said software composition analysis.
Yes, software
Yeah.
composition analysis. So again, same exact acronym, very different depending on what type of context we're in with the question. So for this one, security control assessment. Now, here's just my advice. When you're going in and reviewing some terms, if you see the term security control assessment in your book, substitute any term like that. The way that I would like to encourage you to study it, and the way I've found success, is link it in your mind with 2 or 3 terms that are really distinct from some of the others that are around it, and understand how they work together. So SCA, a couple of the terms. First of all, you don't necessarily need to memorize this, but it's a good one to know. I just put it in the chat. That's NIST SP 800-53A. SP stands for Special Publication. There's a link to the actual standard in the notes that I shared with you guys. So you can go read it if you want. Don't go read it. It's not helpful in your preparation for the CISSP. But that is where we get the definitions of our terms.
It's just good for trivia night.
So this standard here, or SCA, is used as part of the risk management framework, RMF. This is something, risk management framework. I would link that term with government in your mind. Is it common? Can you use it if you're not in the government? Absolutely. But it's most common in the government. So just, again, link those terms. You don't necessarily need to know much more behind it, other than next time you see SCA, you can think, okay, what it actually does is it assesses security controls and makes sure they're working. It's a security control assessment. Do our mechanisms actually work the way we say they're going to work? It's associated with a NIST. So if you get this question, and it might have a list of standards, maybe, knowing NIST SP 800-53 might be helpful. If you were going to memorize any of the NIST special publications, that would probably be in the top 5 that you would want to look at. Risk management framework and SCA, link them to risk management, link them to government.
But Josh, the risk management framework is 837, right?
Risk management framework has its own. Yep, absolutely. So the SCA pulls the concepts of evaluation from NIST. Okay. Question 9. Go for it. I'm launching the poll now. Okay. Nice. You guys are doing good on this. Keep it up. All right. I'm going to end this early here because you guys are nailing it. Data classification. Go through this very briefly. A technical control. Technical. Access control list. Absolutely. Firewall rule. 100% technical. Same thing with encryption. Data classification. We're talking, is it sensitive? Is it critical data? This can have supporting technical controls. So if I pull up a Google Doc with my employer, it lets me know if it's confidential information. That's a technical control that's in place to help me follow administrative control, which is what this is. Your company has a policy on data classification or categorization. Yeah, great job. All right, launching the next poll. We're getting to a couple of good ones here, or ones that I'm excited about. So have at it. Okay, got 4 votes. Stuff in a couple others. All right, good job. Most of you guys got that right. Perfect. What is not? That's our tricker word. What is not the goal of a formal change management program? Informing stakeholders after they occur. Whoops, that's not the right timing. So you guys nailed that. We definitely want to implement change in an orderly fashion. We want a healthy queue. We want change management. We're testing before we push to production. And we want to make sure that changes are reversible too. So the other goals of a change management program, I think, are in your notes. Okay. I'm excited about, we have 2 more questions to go through, and they're trick questions, sort of. I want you guys to practice taking the test from, think about the test writers. So the next question that I'm going to put up actually doesn't have the question. It only has 4 options. So you're going to answer this question without knowing what the question actually was. So I'm going to give you a full minute to do it, and then we'll actually go to the question and follow up. But I want you guys to get practice answering questions when you don't know you don't understand the question. Go back to that SCA example. I don't know what the acronym is, then I'm taking a guess at the answer. So let's take a guess at this answer here. I'm gonna launch this poll for you, and I'll give you a minute on this one again to think it through. No question. Yeah, 30 seconds. Keep it up, and a few more you can vote.
I'm seeing 3 question marks. Is that right?
Yep, that's our question. We don't know what the question is.
Well, you want us?
Okay, sorry, I missed it.
Question?
Yep, I sure do.
Oh, you want us to pick? Okay.
Yep, pick an answer. You don't get the question. You'll get the question here in a second. So awesome. Guys, great job. You almost all got it. Non-disclosure agreement is the correct answer to the question that you don't know yet. So let's go just one more slide here, and I'm going to give you the question, and we're going to see if it makes sense here now. So which of the following is an administrative control protecting confidentiality? Who can tell me why non-disclosure agreement is the correct answer? How did you get that? I didn't even give you the question. How did you figure that out? Most of you did.
It doesn't fit.
It doesn't.
Yes, it is.
Things is not like
That
the
old
other.
Sesame Street game. One of these things is not like the other.
Exactly right. That's exactly. So if you get to a question on your exam and you don't understand it, or you get to a question and you're starting to burn through time, take a look at your answers and just pause for a moment and think if you can common sense it through. So I got one more challenge question for you guys. Again, I'm going to give you the answers, and I'm going to give you part of the question, but this is one of the questions that will have a visual on the actual exam. So it'll give you some diagram, some chart, something to reference in order to answer the question. I'm also not going to give you the context. So in the exam, you might have or especially in practice exams, you'll have, okay, the next 4 questions are all related to this scenario. So I'm not giving you the scenario and I'm not giving you the visual. Okay. Here we go. This is the last practice question.
Depends where we are located geographically all here.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah.
No idea.
That's okay. That's the point.
You know, because some of the questions in the test are going to be like that. Like you're not going to understand what the heck they're asking.
This is about upping your odds in each exam question. People look at the score for each domain and they usually like to use that as a metric. I like to think about possible points that I could have gotten on an exam. So I know I'm not going to know a certain number of questions and not understand them. So if we focus on learning how to answer the questions without even seeing the question, well, we might have bought ourselves 2 or 3 more questions. Okay, nice job. We'll end the poll. All right, we got a little bit of a split here, but most of you did get it right. Yeah, good job. All right, the site is located within a 100-year floodplain. Some of the extra information that's there, and it actually doesn't super influence our answer a lot. So let's just take a step back. Think about what answers even make sense here. We're talking about the annualized rate of occurrence. So every year, how many times is this incident supposed to happen? Now, you didn't know that this was a 100-year floodplain. So what is the annualized rate of occurrence? You have to understand how these terms are expressed. You have to know what your units are for this. What is a unit? A 100 what? 100 times per year. One time, oops, is how we're calculating. So this is number of incidents divided by the number of years. So if we had 5 incidents happen over the course of 10 years, our rate of occurrence would be 0.5. On average, it happens every other year. In this case, it's a 100-year floodplain. On average, it only happens once every 100 years. So the answer is here. It's not actually A to 100. This would be 100 times per year you're getting flooded. So twice a week, your site is getting flooded. I would move real quick. So without even seeing the question, you can cross this answer off your list. I wouldn't want to live anywhere where I knew my site was going to get flooded once a year. C and D are the only really common sense answers that we have here. I could see some areas maybe having a flood every decade, every century. I like that a lot better. And you guys nailed it. You walked exactly through that progression. So most of you got D, a lot of you got C is kind of that second choice answer. And without any other information, those are the 2 answers you would look at. So again, no question, no visual, no nothing. You guys were able to narrow it down to those 2 answers pretty easily. So great job. For this, it does, the question provides a map with FEMA flood data as an example of what you might see. To answer the question, though, you don't actually need the map. All you need to know is it's a 100-year floodplain. So that is the end of our questions, guys. We have a few minutes left. We're going to log our CPEs. That's one of the things that we're going to start doing to close out sessions. So I want to encourage you guys to keep studying. Use that link and send me practice questions. I'm looking for the best of the best, the hardest of the hard. So we'll get the recording posted. It usually takes me a couple of days to actually get it posted there. So let me just pause for a couple minutes. Who has questions, comments, concerns, feedback, anything like that before we move on to continuing education stuff? Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate that. Okay, you guys know to speak up. Let's do CPEs. At the bottom of your student notes, there is a link. I'm going to go grab the link myself. Actually, I think I just have it. So if you go to this website, we'll walk through this together in a moment. This is the information that you'll need. It's CISSP Study Group. 1.5 credits is what we're going with here. the summary, you can get a summary from the notes that I gave you guys if you want to. The supporting documentation, same thing. You can put a link in there. You can put a screenshot to your own notes. The domain, this is mostly relevant to domain 1. It's our conversation here. So I'll show you guys. Let's do this together real quick. Let me just put it down. Sorry, I'm trying to get a window with password manager. Okay. So you'll log in. You can create an account. You don't need to be an ISC2 member to create an account, I don't think. Well, I mean, you have to have an account, but you don't have to be paying dues. You know what I mean? So start and end date are the same for y'all. Good practice to get into to log your CEUs. They are a lot easier if you just do them on the spot instead of letting them pile up. And speaking from experience, it takes a long time to go back and do that. So I'm going to do education. In the future, if you guys are putting on seminars or things like this, these would be considered contributions to the profession. ISC2 really likes that concept. So you can either put courses and seminars or online webinars and podcasts. The title. And let me just double check my work here. Go back to our slide.
Now, as you add these are vetted based on your association with ISC2 as an associate, or?
This is how you would log your own continuing education. So I'm logging in for myself. If you're logging in, you just log it for yourself. We're just gonna, at the end of our sessions, we do this a couple times a week. We just decided we're gonna start getting in the habit of doing it all together. I need to do it myself anyways.
Yep. And so that adds up to the total amount of CPEs you're required to have through the year for your education. All right.
It does. Yeah. I'll show you guys the screen afterwards if you guys want to see it.
Fantastic. Okay.
All right. So another little tip, you can drop or upload files. Let me go find, so this is a copy of your student notes. I'll just show you another thing you can do here, I think. Ooh, no, you have to duplicate it. You have to duplicate it. Here, I'm going to pull up my copy of the student notes so that you guys can see how to. Well, you guys can figure that piece out. I thought I had that open, but I don't want to dig around for it too much right now. I'll have it open for us next time. Okay, so we don't need that, but you can, if you duplicate that template. So I'm going to try and get in the habit of having those student notes available for you guys every week as we're going through this. But you can actually export those as a PDF, pretty much. So you could upload that as a file. You could also just take a quick screenshot, which is what I'm going to do here just real quick.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, you betcha, Alex. Thanks for being here, guys. I sure appreciate it. You guys know I love being here with y'all.
Thank you, Josh. So this is good to do it now before we pass the exam?
Yeah, you can do it now before you pass the exam. It can be just to get in the good habits, but you can also log it with your other CPEs. So I'm showing you how to do it here, but there's different methods of logging them. And I have found it helpful to just get in the habit of doing it.
And quick
This is awesome. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay, Donnie. Quick question too. So this one, if you have other certs like your Sec Plus, Net Plus, it'll renew those, right?
Not quite. The continuing education, absolutely. So this will take me a little while to actually get to this, but I'll document the processes. Like if you have CompTIA certifications, I have them too. you got to log them a little bit differently. So we'll log them here real quick. This is our domain. Group B, just so you're aware of, even if it's not cybersecurity stuff, you can get credit for continuing education like that. So we'll submit it. And I'll show you guys what you would see normally. So I'll go back to my member dashboard. Mine just renewed, so my CPEs are pretty much nothing. I think I got 2 weeks of these on there. So if you go in view details, you can see
Okay.
what you added, and you have a little bit of a record. So the one I just submitted hasn't shown up yet, but it will next time I go on there. I guess this one's just draft. These are just my draft CPEs here. But it's a place to log them, and one of the things on our roadmap is getting a CPE tracking system that would actually work across certifications. I'm going to guess if I had to, that 80% of you probably have 2 or more certifications. That's just pretty common in our industry, especially if you're jumping up to the CISSP. So we're going to try and get a system, because we all got to track them. It's just part of the job. Hopefully we'll have a system that's a little bit more useful until you've passed, that you can apply to your other certs. Yeah.
What I was getting at is, so once you pass the CISSP, it'll renew the other ones. I'm just asking.
Oh, so the way that I manage this is, so when I do any type of continuing education, I'll log the continuing education units on all of the different provider sites. So I'm logging in ISC2 right now, but I can also log that with CompTIA or AWS or any of those other organizations. So you can kind of double up. We did an hour and a half tonight. You're 1.5 credits for CompTIA, but for any other certifications that you have that you need to maintain, you can count towards all of those. I mean, contingent on their specific rules, but if you're doing a cybersecurity cert, all these okay. Did I answer your question, Annette? Please rephrase it if I did not.
Yes, you did. I mean, I know I've gone in there before and added some stuff for like continuing boot camps and stuff like that.
Perfect. The goal is that at the end of this session, you'll have your student notes. It'll have links to some other common certification vendors or providers out there with some instructions on how to submit them. For now, we're just doing ISC2, just so you guys can get familiar with that. But that it is coming, because I need it too. I have to manage my other certifications. It would be nice for me to have. Okay, we are at, boy, we did so good on time tonight, guys. I usually go way over. We're only 2 minutes.
Great job, Josh. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, everybody.
So glad having you guys here. All around me in the community, if you have questions, really
Thank you.
studying with you. Great job in the practice questions.
Thanks for hosting it that way. Really helped.
Thanks.
All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Good
See you
night.
guys.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.